like, and share this video because it is free.
The Tarvacs didn't warn Earth before they struck. They never did. Their empire didn't believe in negotiations. If you were advanced enough to talk, you were advanced enough to lie. So they simply observed, evaluated, and then eradicated. Earth was just another in their conquest logs. Too much noise, too many wars, an obsession with blood, honor, and individuality. Humanity wasn't special. They were messy and inefficient. But the Tarvacs saw value in their biology, resilient, adaptive, and surprisingly tough in low-oxygen environments. They wanted samples, not diplomacy. The first drop ship entered Earth's atmosphere cloaked, descending over a remote Siberian military outpost. The facility, though hardened, never saw it coming. Within 21 seconds, automated weapons carved through steel and flesh alike. By minute 2, the base was silent. The Tarvacs collected remains with precision. Organs, tissue, fluids, especially blood. The sample containers were loaded into their bioship's internal vaults, surrounded by sterilized Varnac steel. Tarvacs engineers logged the haul, confident they'd done this 100 times. This would be no different. Inside Lab Pod 12, a junior xenobiologist named Krith examined a vial labeled H47. Human blood, freshly drawn. He ran the standard scans: protein density, cellular response, bioelectrical integrity. One thing stood out. The clotting process generated a low-level energy field. Not heat, not electricity. Something else. He flagged it and sent the anomaly report to Central Analytics. They ignored it. 3 hours later, Krith returned to find his workstation discolored. His tools, scalpels, injectors, clamps, all showed signs of early-stage corrosion. He ran a sweep for contaminants. None detected. Varnac steel couldn't corrode. It was treated against every known chemical reaction. He replaced his gear and resumed his work. A day later, reports started coming in from other ships. Storage compartments failing. Plating with strange red-brown residue flaking off under pressure. Engineers blamed manufacturing defects. Maintenance crews worked overtime. No one connected it to the blood. Back in the lab, Krith repeated his tests, this time with another sample, H23, drawn from a soldier who resisted arrest and was gunned down mid-charge. The moment the sample hit the analysis cradle, the cradle shorted out. Not a power failure. Metal wires inside had turned brittle and snapped. Krith opened a containment box and stared at the blood swirling slowly inside the vial. He felt watched. Alive. He logged another report. Command dismissed the incident again. The high strategist ordered full-scale genetic extraction. Earth would be turned into a harvest world. Live humans would be collected, dissected, and studied. The biological department prepared to scale up operations. 17 additional collection ships were deployed. Orders were clear: gather the living this time. Dead samples degraded too quickly. Krith didn't sleep. He took a sample of Varnac plating and submerged it in diluted human plasma. Within 10 hours, the surface had pitted. 16 hours later, the plate cracked. He ran a spectrum analysis. The molecular bonds weren't being chemically broken. They were unraveling. Like something inside the blood knew how to dismantle the steel. He sent his findings again. This time, the response came with threats. Cease frivolous theorizing. The message read, your job is analysis, not mythology. So he shut up. On Earth, resistance cells were forming, but they were nothing more than noise. Civilians vanished in the night. Entire towns gone. The Tarvacs collected with brutal efficiency, often leaving their own abandoned tech behind when logistics slowed them down. Human rescue teams found empty ships with no crew, rusted walls, and sealed chambers filled with reddish mist. They assumed it was atmospheric breakdown. Earth's governments didn't yet understand what was happening. Aboard the flagship Zarn Volas, High Strategist Brow conducted a personal inspection of the collected samples. He walked through the vault, eyes scanning rows of gleaming containment tubes. He stopped at one. The outer casing was intact, but strange red stains spread across the interior. He barked for a crewman. The technician opened the case with proper shielding, but the moment the seal broke, a pulse ran through the deck, soft, metallic, like a shiver. The case hissed. A line of rust traced outward from the container latch and spread across the floor like ink and water. The crewman fell back, gloves dissolving, skin burned by an unknown oxidizing agent. Medbots arrived too late. His armor had turned to powder. Nothing in their database explained it. Brow ordered the entire vault incinerated. The flames reached 4,000 degrees. The samples screamed. No one spoke of it afterward. Still, the collection continued. Orders were orders. New containment procedures were issued. Triple seal everything. Use synthetics. No exposed alloys. Biosuits only. But the rust kept appearing on ceilings and coolant pipes along internal walls, far from any blood contact. As if the ship itself was becoming infected, the Tarvax began to see human prisoners differently. At first, they were just specimens. Then they became potential sources of something dangerous. But what? What made their blood different? They had harvested dozens of species before. Predators, telepaths, even shapeshifters. None of them had caused structural decay at the molecular level. None of them had turned Varnac steel into powder. Krith quietly ran a test. He placed 2 sealed vials in a chamber, one with standard acid, the other with fresh human blood. He inserted identical Varnac rods into both. 3 hours in, the acid barely etched the surface. The blood? The rod crumbled into ash. No external catalyst. No radiation. Nothing explainable. He tested with dead blood, and the process slowed. Then with fresh samples, violent samples. Donors who died fighting, screaming, clawing. The reaction accelerated. He made a note. It wasn't the blood. It was the rage inside it. And it was alive. He transmitted this finding one final time. No response. Elsewhere, engineers aboard secondary ships began experiencing failures in weapon systems. Turrets locked up. Armor plating on drop pods crumbled. Drones malfunctioned and collapsed mid-flight. Their joints rusted stiff. One transport ship suffered total systems failure while en route back to orbit. Recovery teams found it adrift. Crew dead, tools melted, the walls discolored and brittle. Black box recordings showed the pilot had cut his finger trying to strap in. A single drop had landed on the navigation console. It was no longer a mystery. Human blood didn't just corrode metal. It chose where to do it. Anything designed to harm or contain humans, guns, restraints, ships, was vulnerable. The more malicious the intent, the faster the breakdown. The Tarvax had never faced a species like this. They called Earth primitive. They didn't know what they had touched. They didn't know they would fight back, even after death. They stopped harvesting live humans after the first massacre. The facility on Titan's dark side was considered unbreachable. Tarvax engineers had buried it under solid ice, guarded by turrets and automated defense webs. It held nearly 200 human captives, sedated and isolated. No communication, no weapons, no risk, until the ice cracked. It wasn't an explosion. It was structural failure from within. Every support beam holding the compound together disintegrated in minutes. The outer shell collapsed under its own weight. Surveillance footage showed the steel changing color before it failed, shifting from dark silver to a red rust hue that bled outward like infection. Inside the holding cells, containment doors had melted, restraints turned to dust. The humans didn't flee. They stood in silence, staring up at the cameras until the entire structure imploded. Command reviewed the footage 23 times. No one could explain how unarmed prisoners took down a structure that withstood asteroid bombardment. The report blamed magnetic resonance failure. No one believed it. Krith watched the logs with trembling hands. He was transferred without explanation. No lab, no desk. A bunk on a reconnaissance ship circling the asteroid belt. No experiments allowed. No access to human samples. Just observation. They didn't want answers anymore. They wanted distance. But it was too late. Word spread. Tarvax soldiers began refusing assignments near Earth. They whispered of blood rot, a cursed energy humans carried, a plague that infected the mind as well as the ship. Veterans who had collected samples began to hallucinate. Some claimed to hear whispers and events. Others described a taste, iron and ash, filling their mouths for no reason. Then came the suicides. First one, then 5, then entire crews locking themselves in and venting the airlocks without orders. One of the ships crashed into Gornas. 3. Wreckage was minimal. Everything had decayed mid-atmosphere, like time accelerated around it. Planetary scans found 0 survivors. Inside the main war chamber aboard the Tsar and Volas, the high strategist held a briefing with all remaining generals. His voice thundered through the deck. It is not magic. It is not a curse. It is a weapon, biological in nature, strategic in intent. The humans may be primitive, but they are not ignorant. Somewhere on that planet, they are crafting this decay, and we will burn them down to the last bone. But even as he spoke, corrosion climbed the walls behind him. The message was transmitted to all ships. By the time it reached the outlying fleets, 6 more had already gone silent. Krith knew what they refused to accept. This was not engineered. No lab on Earth could do this. No scientist had designed a molecular weapon that responded to aggression, to hate, to conquest. This was not invention. It was instinct. Human blood reacted to steel like prey reacts to the predator, by turning it to dust. It was not defensive. It was retribution. Back on Earth, resistance movements began calling the phenomenon Red Vengeance. Not everyone understood it, but they all witnessed it. Weapons confiscated from dead Tarvacs, soldiers rusted within days. Helmets collapsed into red snow. Even boots cracked apart when worn by humans. One soldier, a woman from the Brazilian highlands, was shot and captured, but when her blood soaked the enemy transport floor, the entire ship failed before reaching orbit. She survived. No one else did. She didn't speak afterward, just stared at the sky. The Tarvacs tried countermeasures. Synthetic alloys, inert polymers, even exobone armor grown from non-reactive substrates. At first, it worked. Collection resumed in small pockets. Soldiers advanced carefully, avoiding contact with blood. The first incident came 3 days later. A soldier removed his helmet to adjust a targeting implant. His face was spattered with dried human blood from earlier combat. His skull dissolved within seconds. The implant shorted out and exploded. What they hadn't understood was that the blood didn't need to be fresh. It just needed a reason. That's when the Tarvacs began to fracture internally. Strategic Command ordered full retreat from Earth's surface. Burn the remaining captives. Destroy all evidence. Leave nothing behind. But Science Divisions pushed back. If this power could be isolated, it could be controlled. If it could be controlled, it could be used. The blood, they believed, could become a weapon of empire. Krith was pulled into a hidden lab deep within the orbiting research colony, Vor Enthal. He was ordered to replicate the phenomenon under controlled conditions. They provided him a human, young, maybe 15. Blood samples were taken daily. The boy never spoke, just watched. Krith ran every test imaginable. Temperature changes, atmospheric shifts, emotional stimuli. But nothing triggered the reaction, not in isolation. Then one day, a senior researcher struck the boy during a test. The blood drawn that day rusted through 3 containment layers in 30 minutes. The inner wall of the lab warped. Lights flickered. Security bots dragged the researcher away. Screaming, Krith reviewed the footage. It wasn't the violence. It was the injustice. The blood remembered. After that, Krith didn't sleep. He began to dream with his eyes open. He saw red rivers flowing through corridors, steel towers collapsing into dust, machines choking on rust. He heard voices, none human, none Tarvacs, just ancient, aching rage. It wasn't about species or power. It was about trespass. Earth had been marked. Humanity had bled into the stars, and the stars bled back. The Tarvacs didn't know it yet, but Earth wasn't dying. It was waking up. The final trigger came during a covert extraction in the Indian Himalayas. A high-ranking Tarvacs general was ambushed. His guards retaliated with orbital fire, leveling a nearby village. No survivors. No mercy, except for one girl, no older than 6, who walked out of the smoke with blood dripping from her forehead. The general laughed when he saw her. Then the hull of his command ship cracked. By the time they realized what she was, it was too late. She'd touched the inside wall of the containment unit. That touch spread to the floor, into the circuits, through the engines. The ship never made it back. The wreckage hit lunar orbit like a falling star. By the time recovery drones reached it, everything inside had disintegrated. No bodies, no metal, just rust. And at the center, a single smear of blood that never dried. The Tarvax Empire hadn't lost a war in 9 centuries. Until now, their enemies surrendered before first contact ended. Their presence alone silenced resistance. Yet this rusting, collapsing failure, it wasn't war. It was infection. It didn't fight with fleets or tactics. It fought by simply being. And it was spreading. Chris stood alone in the observatory of Oriental, staring at Earth. It glowed blue, serene, unaware, or pretending to be. He wasn't sure anymore. The lab was quiet. His last assistant had self-terminated after a failed test. No one came to replace him. He ran blood decay models in silence. 22,000 combinations of environment, stress, alloy. No consistent variable. No chemical constants. But always one outcome. Metal dies. Command sent him another sample. This time, from a human who had fought to his last breath in the ruined ruins of Lagos. A soldier with half his body scorched, dying yet refusing to fall. They drew the blood as he cursed them, spitting words none of them translated. The sample burned through the containment syringe before it reached the lab. It melted the assistant's gloves, dissolved through 2 inches of reinforced alloy, and carved into the floor like acid mixed with lightning. Krith didn't bother logging the results. He'd seen enough. The blood wasn't responding to test conditions. It was judging intent. And now it was moving beyond Tarvax comprehension. Across the Empire's edge, remote colonies began reporting system failures. Terraforming reactors collapsed. Atmospheric processors rusted mid-cycle. Communications arrays blacked out. These places had never seen a human. No ships, no survivors. Just decay. Engineers pulled the logs. They found something impossible. Each failing facility had equipment that once touched Earth, or was built using alloy recycled from previous harvest missions. It wasn't localized. It had memory. Varnak steel had never failed, not even on the acid moons of Veldor, but now it turned to red dust anywhere near a trace of human biomaterial. And worse, it began reacting to recorded images of humans. In one incident, a training hologram of a captured Earth soldier caused every tool in the room to rust in under 10 minutes. The crew tried to scrub the feed. The console corroded in their hands. Some began whispering it was conscious, alive, a virus of vengeance, transmitted through memory and blood. On the Tarvax homeworld, panic took root. Religious castes once silent in the shadows came forward, declaring the phenomenon divine retribution. The final blood, they called it, the revenge seed. Worshippers formed cults, urging surrender to force. Military leaders crushed them without hesitation. But new cults rose faster than executions could keep up. In secret, scientists launched a final effort, Project Silence. They gathered every remaining blood sample from Earth. 29 vials, collected from different battles, soldiers, civilians. They locked them in a quantum stasis vault orbiting the black hole at Sector Grid 04, Zarn. No light, no matter, no chance of reaction. They monitored the vault for 3 days. Then the vault began to corrode. Krith watched the footage again and again. The vault wasn't even made of metal. It was compressed neutrino lattice. The blood had no way to interact with it. Yet inside it pulsed. It wasn't rust anymore. It was growth. Tendrils of red cracking through the lattice, like roots through stone. One vial shattered. Then another. By the 6th, the vault was jettisoned into the black hole. The reading stopped, but Krith knew better. Black holes destroy everything, yes. Everything except rage that doesn't forget. When the vault vanished, a tremor hit Vorental. System spiked. Lights dimmed. Gravity faltered for 6 seconds. No physical connection. No energy trail. Just the echo of vengeance. Krith collapsed. He awoke screaming, not from pain, from memory. A dream of Earth, not war-torn, not burning, but still, silent, red veins running through its rivers, oceans humming like a heartbeat, a sky thick with rust-colored clouds. Not dead, watching, waiting. The Tarvax Empire finally pulled back. No more dropships. No more harvest missions. A full withdrawal order was issued, sealed with a high strategist crest. Burn everything that had touched Earth. Every ship, every tool, every sample. Deny it ever happened. The official record. Earth was barren, toxic, a dead experiment. But that was a lie. Krith knew the truth, and so did the ships. Fleet after fleet returned from Earth orbit in silence. No comms, no beacons, just hollow shells drifting toward shipyards. When boarding parties entered, they found no crew, no signs of violence, just piles of red dust and hollow armor. Tools rotted, weapons melted, metal turned to rust before touch. No life, no fight, only judgment. Chris stood before the decommissioning council to give his report. He offered one sentence. Humanity is not a species. They asked him to clarify. He didn't, because he couldn't. He saw now what the Tarvax had triggered. Not just a defense mechanism, not a virus, not even vengeance, but a boundary, a universal barrier, coded into flesh and fury. A truth that no empire had ever discovered before, because no empire had deserved to. Do not bleed them. Do not harm them. Do not think you can own them, or their blood will remember, even after they forget, even after they're gone, even after you've won. Because human blood was not just a fluid. It was legacy, echo, curse, and it would always come back. The Tarvax stopped saying the word human. Official documents replaced it with coded designations. N89 Alpha, subject read, Biohazard Class Omega. Even in speech, officers flinch when forced to refer to Earth or its people. Like the syllables themselves had become corrosive. They weren't wrong. Krith received one final transmission before his clearance was revoked. A ship had drifted into Tarvax orbit from deep space. Not human-built. Not Tarvax. No known origin. An automated message played on loop in 23 dialects. We warned you. You didn't listen. The ship was empty. Not decayed, hollowed, as if the inside had aged 10,000 years in 10 seconds. The hull had no rust, only silence. It wasn't a threat. It was a confirmation. Across the Empire, installations began tearing themselves apart. Metal twisted. Support beams snapped without force. Even stone-like substrates used in ancient structures began flaking. Temples collapsed. Orbiting stations turned to drifting debris. The High Strategist's personal war castle, Velzeric, broke apart in real time during a live transmission. No warning. The support girders corroded in a slow, groaning collapse. He tried to flee in his private cruiser. The doors sealed shut, then liquefied. They never found his body. Within a solar cycle, Tarvax society broke into fragments. Fleets turned inward. Command centers isolated themselves. Records of Earth were purged. Maps redrawn without soul system. Entire planetary networks severed to stop any trace of the rot from spreading. And yet it did, because it wasn't in the blood anymore. It was in the memory. Krith escaped the collapse of Oriental with only what he could carry. One data spike, one breathing mask, and one image, the last scan taken of Earth's surface. It showed no cities, no fire, no wreckage, only a vast, slow-moving wave of red, a haze settling across the land like a mist made of rust, not destroying, not burning, just consuming. Quietly, he hid in the ruins of a derelict outpost on the edge of the far rim, beyond the reach of decaying communication beacons. It had no Tarvax steel, nothing touched by Earth. He waited. He didn't sleep. He barely breathed. And then, after cycles of silence, a knock. Not on a door, on his mind. He felt it before he heard it, like static pressing against his skull. A pressure. A call. He stood and walked to the observation deck. In the dark void beyond the window, something drifted. At first, it looked like a vessel. Old, cracked, no lights, no engines. Then it turned, not with thrusters, not with energy, with will. And Krith saw it, a child, human, sitting calmly inside the structure, looking out at him through a fractured viewport. She bled from the forehead. She smiled, and the entire structure around her rippled, not with light, but with rot, like time reversing and accelerating in the same moment. Steel peeled back, bolts crumbled, the bones of the craft screamed as it reshaped itself, not into a weapon, into a memory. Krith understood, in that final moment, what none of them had grasped. The blood didn't just destroy. It remembered what was taken. Every city burned, every body broken, every lie spoken under oath, every moment of pain sealed in red. And now it was sharing that memory across space, across matter, not to punish, not to avenge, to balance. The child reached out with her hand. Krith didn't flinch. He opened the airlock and stepped into the void. There was no pain, only rust. All across the galaxy, Tarvak's remnants tried to rebuild. Refuge fleets formed alliances. Secret vaults stored untouched alloys, harvested from planets untainted by human contact. But the rot always found them. A single human memory was enough. A drawing, a story, a name whispered in sleep, and the decay would return, silent and unrelenting. Entire star systems became ghost zones, cursed regions avoided by every species. Satellites failed when crossing the invisible threshold. Metal oxidized. Beacons went dark. No salvage crew ever returned. On one forbidden world, researchers decades later found only a single artifact intact, a stone tablet. Etched into it, in a dead Tarvak's dialect, were 3 words. We bled them. No empire remembered who wrote it, but every species feared why. Earth remained untouched. No ships dared approach. No scouts. No probes. It was left alone, a sacred black hole in every star chart. Some said the humans had all died. Others said they had evolved. A few believed they had never been human to begin with, only rage, wrapped in skin, shaped like a warning. But no one came back to find out, because the last time someone tried, they brought steel, and the blood had never forgotten.